Welcome to your Aligned as Fuck Life podcast, hosted by your girl, Shalvika. I am a life transformation coach, a wife, a cat mom, pure generator, Enneagram 3, Pisces sign, and helping you build an aligned as fuck life is my jam. Out in this world, we believe that there are no set rules for building a life, career, and business. That we are all unique and we should be able to embrace our uniqueness in everything we do while shedding all the rules or bullshit rules one at a time. We will talk all things mindset, manifestation, healing, energetics, rituals, success, and so much more. I believe that I can have it all and you can too. Ready for an episode that will take you one step closer to your aligned as fuck life? Let's get started. Hi, and welcome to another episode of your Aligned as Fuck Life with Shalvika. And let's extend a very warm welcome to Ahuva, who's our guest today. Welcome, Ahuva.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So before we dive into our topic around why women are like more prone to burnout, do you want to just introduce yourself? Like tell us a little bit about
I'm
your journey.
Ahuva Hershkop. Yes, I will tell you all about my journey. So I'm Ahuva Hershkop. I am by training, by licensure, I am a pediatric registered dietitian. Turned burnout coach over the last couple of years for working moms who are really feeling burnt out, trying to do all of the things, do it all, have it all, and just feeling like their life is more hustle than they ever anticipated or ever thought that it could be. And so I work with women in my 12-week program to step out of what I call the working mom hustle culture, which is where women find themselves in hustle culture, in general, where you have to give 100% all the time to your work, no matter what, and 100% all the time, no matter what, to your family. And unless you're an exhausted puddle on the floor, you're not doing it right. And then blame themselves when they burn out. And we teach women how to have a life that they get to enjoy now without compromising on how they show up for their family or showing up for their professional goals.
Oh my God, that is so important. And I think that is, especially like in the Indian context, that has happened very drastically in the last 30, 40 years because, women used to not go out and work so much earlier, right? And then like probably 2 generations before me, women started going out to work, right? So we basically taught our daughters to go and be independent and support yourself and have insane careers. But we never really taught them how to, have that balance. And we never really taught our men how to support women who actually go out. I don't know if you noticed that, but I noticed that a lot in the culture. Women are supposed to be superhumans on all fronts.
Completely. And I think that if we look back, my grandfather, right? And my grandmother, she had dinner on the table at 6:00. That was what her, the way that I say it is 2 generations back, right? I'm born in 1990. Right. So 2 generations back from us, there was very clear, I think that it's important always to acknowledge a certain level of privilege when I'm saying this, because my grandparents who are Holocaust survivors, this didn't happen for. Both of them were working, both of them needed to, but for my other, set of grandparents, there was a very clear definition of what being excellent as a man looked like. And it was go out, provide for your family, walk in the door with your briefcase at the end of the day. And there was a very clear definition as a woman of what that looked like, right? Have dinner on the table at the end of the day, have a clean house. And I think in the generation prior to us, right, so our parents' generation or my parents' generation, when women started going into the workforce, it was kind of we just handed them both of these things. If you want to be excellent, just do these 2 roles, right? Do the one that we previously ascribed to a man in the 1940s and do the same thing as a woman. You want to do it all? Just do it all, right? And I think this is the first generation where at least I would like to encourage women to say, do you really have to do all of those things, right? Just because someone handed you those definitions, do you have to keep them?
And feel inadequate. I'm also 1990 born, with the same and I
Yeah.
just felt that like my mom was a working, but like I think she was the first working woman in her lineage who went out and did a job and
Yeah.
was a boss and all of those things. And but I could see there was so much guilt around that, right? Like around not being there for me, around not being someone who made like food at home, like everything was made at home. And
Yeah.
it's just so fucking pissing off, right?
Yeah.
Especially when we look at like physiologically, women are the gender whose energies kind of move cyclically, right? And
Yeah.
yeah.
Totally. And I think, we were talking right before we hit record about food and, Jewish culture and Indian
Right.
culture. And for sure, there are so many places that are, let's say, supposed to be or historically have been the women's domain where like you're taking a shortcut. You're not making this from scratch. You're not doing this, on your own. And there's so much judgment that gets placed
Yeah.
on women and that women place on
themselves, yeah.
themselves
Yeah.
when they're not, right? When they're taking the shortcut, when they're doing something that
Yeah.
works for them. And it just is, it's so much for women to often hold.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how you help your clients, or if someone's listening, what should be the first step that they need to take if they are in that space where they're like, oh, I gotta do like a million roles, I'm so fucking guilty and judge myself and all of that.
Yeah. So I use, and I'm running a challenge tomorrow. Basically, my entire strategy for everything that I do comes down to one strategy, which is I call it my what, why, what. Right? If it's time management and you're like, I don't know how I'm wasting so much time or how I have no time, what are you doing? Understand why you're doing it and understand what you're getting from it, right? If you're feeling like I'm feeling so much judgment, it really is understand number one, the what. What are the definitions that you're using? Right? Because very often we keep ourselves stuck with these subconscious definitions. Yeah. If I don't do the dishes every day, then I'm not a good woman. Yeah. Right? And you don't know that you hold those, but really that definition, right? That one thing, the things that we're thinking about, we make every decision of our life based on them, right? So we're allowing things we're not even conscious of to really rule our lives. And then we're like, I don't know why I keep on doing the same thing over and over again. I don't know why I keep on feeling like shit every single night and, judging myself as I'm trying to relax because I didn't do enough today. And really it's because often we're holding so many of these old definitions that we've never brought to the conscious level. And so really that's the first thing that we always need to do is just understand where we're coming from, right? Because judgment doesn't come from nowhere. And whether it's somebody else's and you just need to let that go, or it's something that you're holding and we need to understand why you're holding those definitions, right? Of like something as simple as what does a good woman mean?
Oh my God, that is such a big part of my work, like such a big chunk of my time is actually spent on helping women break out of that good girl conditioning. Right? Mm-hmm. Because I think like right from a young age, we've been kind of told that this is how a good woman or a good girl kind of really looks like. And it becomes so much a part of who we are that we don't even realize how systemic and internalized it is. Like, again, like very random, but I remember like when I just got married to my husband. And, him and I always have this conversation that, we want to create an equal household where, these gender demarcated roles are not so established all the time. Right. And then I was talking to my friend and I was like, oh my God, I'm so lucky. Like he helps around the house. He helps cooking. He helps with cleaning. And that night I was like, does he go around telling his friends the same thing?
No, of course not.
It is such a shocker to me to realize that my thinking was so patriarchal.
And so I think like that's really like, and you being able to see that in yourself, sometimes we don't even recognize, right? Like, and as you're saying, like, we're working to create an equitable households, and even still holding this very strong definition of like, he's the best guy ever because he's doing this for me, right? And I think that it goes both ways, right? Because for a while I used to joke that I was a bad feminist because I'm like, my husband like walks into my kitchen and I'm like, get out. Don't touch any of my stuff. Don't touch my cooking thing. I don't want you making a mess. Just get out. Like, and I love being like, I'm going in a couple of hours to my kids' school to give out donuts for their birthdays. Like, I love doing that stuff. It's, being there are pros and cons always to being the, what's the word that people are using now? But like the parent who's does the majority of the parental sort of, responsibility. But I love that, right?
Yeah.
Like, I enjoy that. If there was going to be a parent who was going to be a stay-at-home parent in our relationship, I would want that to be me, right? And I think there's also so many people now who are like, okay, I know that I still hold that definition of a good woman does the cooking and the cleaning and this and that, but also, am I a bad feminist? Am I a bad career woman if I want to be the one and I enjoy those things, right? Like, the reality is that it cuts both ways. And so a lot of women are finding themselves stuck in, there is no right way to do it, right? And I say this for my clients all the time, is like, I hear all the time, oh God, things feel so hard, right? And we've been given this definition also of like, life's supposed to be hard. Being a working woman is hard. Being a working mom is hard. Being this is hard. Being that is hard. And also all of these pictures of it being so easy, right? And so if it feels hard, you're wrong because it's supposed to feel easy. And if it feels easy, you're wrong because it's supposed to feel hard. And so there's so many places where women are just caught in like, there's literally no right way to go, but we feel guilty that we don't know the right way to go.
I know. And I think it's also, I mean, it's a very systemic thing. Like, and it's not something that has a clear-cut solution. Like, the other side of it is also like, my husband loves cooking, right? Like, he loves cooking. But traditionally, like, he was never let into the kitchen because my mother-in-law was a homemaker who was the designated person to take care of the household, right? So he could never express that side of himself, right? So, I think that's the whole point of this podcast, is because like, I want to create like a whole bank of role models around like whoever it is you want to be. Right? It's not about the right way. It's about what feels aligned as fuck for you, and that's your right way.
Yeah.
And it may be right for me today. Like, I don't know, 2 years down the line, it may not seem as right as it seems today, and that's okay. Because I'm changing and growing and evolving.
Totally. And I think that that's the scariest thing, especially for the perfectionists, that I work with, is the women that I work with really are people who are excellent at following the rules. Like, you get, and that's me also. Like, you give me a rule and I'm like, oh my God, I love you. Like, thank you. Just give me, like, like, you want to give me a course syllabus and I know what's coming down the line. I'm so happy. Like, so happy. And I work with women who often are mothers and or are entrepreneurs, because those are the two places I often find where there's literally no rules. And so these people, am I allowed to swear on this podcast? I'm assuming I can. They freak the fuck out. Like, they just freak like the absolute fuck out, because they're like, what do I do now? Like, nobody's telling me, nobody's feeding me the next step, right? Like, every child is different. Every parenting relationship is different. So motherhood is going to be a place where, like, if you don't know what's right for you, you're going to have a really hard time. And that's where a lot of moms find themselves. And entrepreneurship is the same, right? If you can't figure out your own rules, you're going to have a really hard time doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. And, okay, so I think you were talking about the 3 steps, and then we just like went in a random direction. So sorry.
Totally. So the the next one is
Why?
understanding why, right? Like, why do we hold this? Where did it come from? Is it somebody else's? Did we just sort of like absorb it from around ourselves? Do we want, do we want to believe that? And then the third one is the
Right.
what, right? Like, so what do we want to think instead? What are we working towards? Like, what definitions do we actually want to hold? I challenge my clients inside our program. Always, we write our definitions of excellence for every area of our lives. I have someone in my program going through fertility treatments. So we have her definition of excellence for what it looks to like to move through there. Whether it's starting a business, whether it's in your relationships, because it's really important that we actually bring our definitions to the conscious level, so that we know what we're operating with. Right? It's like trying to drive a car and like you don't know if it's stick shift or automatic, or like you don't know, like, the gas pedal is somewhere in the car and you have to find it. Like, that doesn't work, right? You go into a vehicle, you want to know exactly how you're driving the car. And that's what we need to be able to do with our lives, because then you have to set your destination also. Like, where are you going? What are your values? What do you want your life to look like? And women often aren't taught to do that. We're like, let's absorb it from everybody else, what everybody else thinks is right for me. And then like randomly, right? It's like, going on Google Maps and like everybody's just putting in a new direction, right? Somebody's like, turn left, turn right, like, and you're trying to get somewhere specific, but you're listening to everybody else randomly giving you directions and where you're supposed to drive. And you're like, the map says right. And they're like, no, definitely turn left, right? And we're listening. And then we're wondering why we never feel like we're making progress towards the place that we want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, okay, what would be your, top 2 tips for someone who is there, like who's burned out and who's just like in the trenches and trying to make it work?
Number one, don't go at it alone. Whether it's working with someone like me in my program, I think that it's, I hear all the time, like, I know what to do. I'm just not doing it. I just need to do this list of things that I know can help me. Number one, that list might be totally wrong, right? Because sometimes we don't always know. And number two, it's really challenging to shift brain patterns, to shift behavior patterns, to shift neural pathways completely on your own. It can be done, but it's a million times harder. And there's also, I think that it's really important to be able to find community. One of the things that, women say all the time when they come into my space is like, it's just so great that I'm not alone. Like, I'm not the only, and I think that that's part of the biggest challenge. I mean, like Vivek Murphy, like the former Surgeon General in the US, is saying like loneliness is going to be one of the biggest challenges of our time, right? And I think that in so many different places, and this in specific, when women are burning out, it feels like I'm the only one going through this. I'm the only one who can't hack it. I'm the only one who can't handle, doing it all. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And yet so many women spend their entire lives feeling that way, right? And just finding community, being able to say like, oh, I'm actually not the only person. Actually, lots of people feel this way. Actually, it's not my fault that I'm here is huge for people.
And I think even there, right, like this strong, independent, modern woman persona that we have created and have celebrated, that also comes in the way of you going out and seeking help. Because, a lot of times we are raised being told that seeking help is a sign of weakness. Right? And that's just ridiculous. Like, no man can be an island. Like, you have to operate in a community. And that is so fucking powerful.
And I think that, I saw somewhere, it was like on Instagram or something. It was like the modern condition is like trying to do things independently that historically we've done with an entire village and then wondering why we're so tired all the time. Right? And it's this idea that we're supposed to do it, because the truth is that in the modern world, in theory, you could be a single person doing lots of different things, right? There isn't as much of like the in your face village, like, here's the village culture. And so in some ways, if we want it, we actually have to ask for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Whereas like, when we lived more in
Right.
community, maybe you didn't have to do that as much because people would see things. Your kid would run there, someone else would,
Yeah.
run down the street and like someone would feed your kid,
Right.
whatever. Like just nowadays, if you want that, when we're all sort of siloed in our own little houses and our own little
Yeah.
like spaces, you almost have to ask for it more, which is a
Yeah,
huge
yeah,
challenge.
absolutely. And I think lives have also become more disconnected. Like traditionally, like India had a lot of joint families. Like that was a thing in
Yes.
India where like generations would like live together under the same roof, right? And families would be huge. People had a lot of children back then. Like my dad, they're like 5 brothers, right? And I'm an only
Yeah.
daughter. And like and when I have a kid, I'll probably have just one kid. And so like the size of families is also kind of growing small. I know the situation is probably different in the US, but that's what's happening at least in this part of the world, right? So
Yeah.
even that is kind of shrinking, and it's
Right.
like I was reading this study again, very random direction, but I was reading the study about the current situation in Japan, and like people are so used to being by themselves and having everything automated for them that they don't need other
Yes.
humans, that the urge to actually go out and date and have sexual relationship is
Yeah.
going down. Like
Yes. I heard the same.
like they're hypothesizing that if this continues, then by 2080 or something, there might not be a pure Japanese person that would be born, and that's just insanely crazy. Like how isolated we are becoming, even though we are so connected. Like I mean, look at us. We're literally across the globe, and we're still having this conversation.
Yeah. And I think that's really I always say it's interesting because I see it from both sides, right? So I'm an
Right.
Orthodox
Yeah.
Jew. So Sabbath
Right.
that means we don't use cars, we don't use electricity, like all of Saturday, right?
Oh,
So
I didn't know that. I'm sorry. I'm not very much aware.
yes, I keep Sabbath. So I like that means like we don't cook food, we don't turn on and off lights,
Oh.
we don't use cars, we don't use anything like that.
Interesting.
So I function in the like I don't want to say like general world.
Right.
I don't know what
Like,
what other
yeah.
words to use. But outside of
Right.
the Jewish community. But that also means that we have everything gets built around the synagogue.
Right.
So nobody moves more than like a 15-minute walk away
Right.
from a synagogue because you're not going to walk 45 minutes to an hour. I mean, people do, but
Right.
generally speaking, you try not to. So there's a whole culture and a whole community built around one synagogue. So like when I had my twins, like I had meals cooked for me for 2 weeks. while living in the synagogue.
Yeah. Right.
Right. So there's a very, very strong cultural, like, I always say that any young person could call me and say that they're a young person looking to get into a field in the Jewish community. You'd help them because they were just a young Jewish person. Like, it's
Right.
what you do. Right. And then there's the rest of the world that is so separated
Right.
from community. Like, I sort of see it
Yeah.
from both sides in that I feel like I'm almost insulated from how separated the world is becoming because I have
Right.
this one part of my life where I'm so strongly in community.
Right. And I think that is amazing that that your tradition is still being kept alive, because that used to be true.
Yeah.
Like even in India, like my grandparents still live like a 10-minute walking distance from the temple. Right, like everyone, and like if I actually, now that I think about it, my grandparents' house, like all the houses in that entire vicinity are all related to us by some means or another. So they automatically had that sense of community, which we are kind of like losing as we are moving to bigger cities. Like I live on an 11-story apartment with me, my husband, and 2 cats, and like there's literally like no sense of community whatsoever, right? So it is changing very drastically, and it's amazing that
Yep.
you have that available. Like that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think like it is because for so many
It is.
people it is changing. right? And like the people that my professional community or, all of that is even like my neighbors, right? I don't know
Right.
all of them because we're people, it's you sort of like stay where you are, or you stay in your house, or you stay like on your property. Like there isn't
Yeah.
really, all of, even like I know people when we lived in an apartment building that like we didn't know so many people, right? So I can see, it's interesting to me to watch some of the
Right. Yeah.
disconnection and then also have this one place that I can very
Yeah.
strongly plug
Yeah.
in.
So, okay, I also wanted to kind of bringing our conversation back to, like, I wanted to know if you also kind of work with the whole cyclical nature of energies, like for women specifically, like if that's something that you use in your work with burnout.
I don't specifically talk necessarily about the cyclical nature, but what we do talk about is understanding your own, like stopping to judge your
Right.
own energy. Right? Whether you find that through moving through the cycle or just, like it was daylight savings time last night, or yesterday, like my kids were up
Yeah.
the entire night, like honoring the fact that this is not going to be the day where I'm like firing on all
Right.
cylinders,
Yeah.
right? And I think that whether it's the cyclical nature of like, being a woman or it's just life happens and we have to roll with it. I think we spend so much time often thinking I'm not supposed to be like this, right? I'm supposed to function like a robot where every single day is the same and I feel exactly, and I can handle exactly the same number of hours of work and I can handle exactly the same number of hours of, whatever it is. Or if I'm, and I'm a runner, so I used to for sure feel like this when I was burning out of like, I should be able to do the same distance run every
Right.
single time, even if I was up all night and even if I was this and even if I'm that. And that's just not the way that women's bodies specifically
Exactly.
function.
And like you can't be productive all the time. You can't be efficient all the time. And you can't be. And
Yeah. If there was a way, I would have found it. So there definitely is.
honestly, it really pisses me off when we talk about humans in terms of productivity and efficiency. Because I'm just like, we ain't machines. Like we're fucking humans.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else that you feel called to add at this point?
No, this is such a
I
great
know we just went
conversation.
all over the place, but yeah, it's been yeah.
All over the place. That's how my
mine
brain
too.
tends to go.
ADHD brain here, always all over the place. So before we kind of wrap up, this is the question that I ask all my guests. What is the one book or movie or podcast or media that is like your all-time favorite? It doesn't necessarily have to be connected to burnout, but like something that you love going back to.
Oh my God, I like so many of those things. I mean, I just showed my kids Mulan yesterday, which is such a great movie still. My favorite book it's called The Checklist Manifesto. It's actually the writer, he's a surgeon in the States. He has another book, oh my gosh, that is called, why am I going to forget now? But it's actually on the difference between Indian culture and Western culture in terms of how we deal with death and dying of elders. And it's so fascinating. But that's a whole other side. But his name is Atul Gawande. It's called The Checklist Manifesto. He was charged by the WHO to implement checklists in surgical procedures to decrease the risk of morbidity and mortality. And really what I love about it, aside from the fact that something simple can drastically change outcomes for people around the world, is really how it pulls from so many different places, because I feel like that's how my brain works also. He sort of takes the checklist from aviation, like from like flying planes into surgical procedures and into construction sites and into different places to really improve outcomes in so many of these different places.
Nice. Interesting. I'm going to check it out.
I really I read it or I listen to it probably once a quarter.
Wow. Yeah, cool. I'm gonna check it out. All right. So before we wrap up, also another thing, how can the listeners reach out to you? Of course, I'll add into the show notes, but if you want to share your handles, that'll be amazing.
yeah, so I spend lots of time on Instagram. My handle is at Ahuva Hershkop, and I have a private Facebook community as well called Beyond Burnout with
Cool.
Ahuva Hershkop.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ahuva. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I don't know where, like, we've literally been chatting for half an hour. I don't know where the time went. But thank you so much for being here.
That was the best.
And I'm so glad that you were here. Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in today's episode. If you absolutely loved what you heard today, be sure to share it with me by leaving a review on iTunes so that I can keep the good stuff coming. And if you aren't already following me on social media, come soak up some extra inspiration and send me a hello on Instagram by searching at Shalvika P. Also tagged in the show notes. I love and adore you so much, and I will talk to you super soon. In the meantime, continue building your most authentic and aligned as fuck life. Ciao!